At 6:05 local time, a truck crosses onto Russia's most expensive bridge. Seconds later, the deck erupts, sending fireballs into the sky and dropping 2 spans of concrete into the Kerch Strait below. But here's what almost no one talks about. This wasn't the first bridge built across this strait, and the first one collapsed within months, decades before Ukraine ever fired a shot at this one. The history behind this bridge is stranger, older, and far more revealing than most coverage lets on. Most people assume the Kerch Bridge is a purely modern story. It isn't. Soviet forces actually built a railway bridge across this exact strait back in 1944, right after retaking Crimea from Nazi Germany. It was finished in just 7 months under wartime pressure, and it collapsed within months, destroyed by winter ice flows and storms the engineers hadn't accounted for. So the very first attempt to permanently connect Russia to Crimea across this strait failed on its own, with no explosives involved at all. That's a detail almost never mentioned when people talk about Putin's bridge. Fast forward to 2014. Putin didn't wait to think this through. He ordered construction of a new Kerch Bridge on March 19th, just 1 day after formally signing the treaty annexing Crimea. The contract went to a company called SGM Group, owned by Arkady Rotenberg, a close personal friend of Putin's from his judo days back in Leningrad, decades before either man held any power at all. Here's the detail that rarely gets attention. SGM had built pipelines before. It had never built a bridge in its life, and had no track record in large-scale civil engineering of this kind whatsoever. Despite that, Rotenberg was personally awarded the title Hero of Labor by Putin once the project was done. And building here wasn't simple. The Kerch Strait sits in an active seismic zone, littered with undersea mud volcanoes and drifting ice in winter. Engineers had genuine doubts about whether this project was even possible. To make it work, Russian crews built massive rock dams from both the Taman Peninsula and Crimea, physically altering the strait itself, and in the process, nearly destroyed Tuzla Island, a small landmass that was home to several endangered plant species. Environmentalists later documented a rise in dolphin deaths in the area, linked to the noise pollution from construction and the bridge's ongoing operation. That's an environmental cost to this symbol of Russian resolve that almost never makes it into war coverage. The original budget was estimated at 150 billion rubles. By the time it was finished, the final bill had ballooned to nearly 228 billion rubles, roughly $4 billion. Making it, at 19 kilometers, the longest bridge in Europe. And in a moment that would later look almost too fitting, Putin personally drove a truck across the road bridge himself at its May 2018 opening ceremony, cameras rolling, as a display of confidence in the structure. That image became darkly ironic 4 years later, on October 8, 2022, deliberately timed to land 1 day after Putin's 70-year birthday. A truck bomb detonated on the bridge, collapsing 2 road spans and igniting a fuel train on the adjacent rail line. What's rarely emphasized is what happened next. Within just 10 days of that attack, Russia launched its first mass missile and drone campaign against Ukraine's civilian power grid, a retaliation widely understood to be a direct response to this single strike on a bridge. One attack on a piece of infrastructure reshaped how the entire war against Ukrainian civilians was fought for months afterward. Less than a year later, on July 17, 2023, Ukraine returned with a completely different method. 2 experimental naval drones, each carrying 850 kilograms of explosives, detonated beneath the bridge's road deck. Ukraine's military intelligence service publicly claimed responsibility, one of the rare times Kiev has openly done so. Since then, Russia has surrounded the bridge with an elaborate defense system, smoke screens, floating barriers, and patrol boats, turning a bridge Putin once drove across proudly into one of the most heavily fortified pieces of infrastructure on Earth. So why does this bridge matter more than almost any other target in this war? Because it was never just concrete and steel. It's a structure with a century of failed attempts behind it, built on a friendship instead of engineering experience, in a place nature never wanted a bridge to stand, and every time it struck, the retaliation reaches far beyond the Kerch Strait itself.